I'm Elizabeth Warren, Chair of the Congressional Oversight Panel. I'm here to introduce our June Oversight Report, the AIG rescue, its impact on markets, and the government's exit strategy. At its peak, AIG was a corporate titan, one of the largest and most successful companies in the world. It had over $1 trillion in assets and 76 million customers across 130 countries. But the breadth of its operations far outstripped the ability of regulators to oversee its business. As former Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson later said, AIG was so seriously underregulated that, although 400 agencies were supposed to keep an eye on it, nobody had a complete picture. Given this free rein, AIG ran wild in the market for complex financial products called derivatives. Essentially, the company sold insurance that subprime mortgages would not fail. And so long as subprime borrowers kept making their payments, AIG earned steady revenues. But along the way, it accumulated staggering amounts of risk. If subprime mortgages ever stumbled, the company would be in deep trouble. Now, we all know how this story ended. In the summer of 2008, AIG's day of reckoning arrived. Its creditors began demanding tens of billions of dollars in immediate cash, and by September, AIG couldn't pay up. In only a matter of months, AIG's worldwide empire had collapsed, brought down by the company's insatiable appetite for risk, its blindness to its own liabilities, and the failure of its regulators to provide any meaningful check on recklessness. Ordinarily, the company would have faced bankruptcy, but in the midst of a financial crisis, the federal government decided that AIG must not be allowed to fail. So the Federal Reserve committed $85 billion to rescue AIG. After more contributions from the Fed and investments from the Treasury under TARP, total government assistance reached $182 billion. Now, to put that number in context, it's almost $2,500 for every household in America, or about the cost per year of employing every public school teacher in the nation. The panel has spent months digging through hundreds of thousands of documents and reviewing the government's actions. We're left with some major concerns. First, the government failed to exhaust all options before rescuing AIG. The Federal Reserve and Treasury said they had only two choices: either rescue the company in full and pay off all of its obligations, or allow global financial chaos. The panel rejects this reasoning. The government had other options in between, and it should have exhausted them before spending a penny of taxpayer funds. Let me give you an example. The Fed could have acted earlier and had more time to secure a rescue funded in whole or in part by the banks relying on AIG's insurance. Now, let me be clear. A private rescue would have been difficult, perhaps even impossible to arrange. But if the effort had succeeded, the impact on market confidence would have been extraordinary, and the savings to taxpayers would have been immense. Our second concern is that the rescue distorted the marketplace by turning AIG's risky bets on subprime mortgages into fully guaranteed transactions. In the ordinary course of business, the cost of AIG's failure would have been borne by its shareholders and its creditors. But the government instead shifted those costs in full to the taxpayers. This meant we rescued highly sophisticated investors who voluntarily accepted grave risks. It also meant we rescued foreign banks that depended on AIG to meet their capital requirements. Our third concern is that the government failed to address perceived conflicts of interest. The same small group of law firms, investment banks, and regulators played many conflicting roles. The lawyers who represented banks trying to put together a private rescue package became the lawyers to the Federal Reserve, shifting sides in only a matter of minutes. Those same banks appeared first as advisors, then potential rescuers, and ultimately as beneficiaries of the rescue. These entanglements created the perception that the government considered accountability and transparency to be less important than bailing out Wall Street. Fourth, even at this late stage, it remains unclear whether taxpayers will ever be repaid in full. Now, AIG is optimistic. Their CEO told the panel, "I'm confident you'll get your money plus a profit." But the Congressional Budget Office currently estimates that taxpayers will lose $36 billion. The final accounting will depend on the ability of AIG to grow its business in the coming months and years, which means we just don't know yet what the final bill will look like. But make no mistake, we are still at risk for serious losses. Finally, the rescue of AIG continues to have a poisonous effect on the marketplace. By providing a complete rescue that called for no shared sacrifice among AIG and its creditors, the government fundamentally changed the rules of the game on Wall Street. Essentially, the government committed taxpayers, you and me, to pay any price and bear any burden to prevent the collapse of America's largest financial institutions and the markets they operate in. For as long as the biggest companies in America believe that you and I will bail them out, the worst effects of AIG's rescue will linger. Now, you can read the panel's full report, and you can offer your own views by visiting our website, cop.senate.gov. The decision to rescue AIG was made in a moment of panic as world markets seemed on the verge of collapse. By at least one measure, the government's actions were a success. America did not fall into a full-scale depression, for which we should all be grateful. But this victory came at an enormous cost. Billions of taxpayer dollars were put at risk. A marketplace was changed forever, and the confidence of the American people remains badly shaken. How the government will manage those costs, both in the specific case of AIG and in the more general case of TARP, remains a central challenge, one that the panel will continue to review.